Um, I do, as we usually do when we start one of these, this is a topic that some of you have seen before. This is a topic that is new to others. So just keep that in mind. So when we're going to do a breakout room later, and we're going to have opportunities to share. So this is an opportunity both for you to provide space for others, and to model the behaviors we're looking for here as well. Also, another reminder that while this session will conclude our 2025 professional skills workshop, the learning doesn't end tonight. Every time we get together, whether you're on our team or another team, is an opportunity to practice these skills, develop them further, and work with others to get feedback on that. So let's jump in. So very happy that you all made it tonight. Special welcome to those of you who are visiting from other teams. And certainly a special welcome too for those new members to our team who decided to join tonight. Um, Tonight we're going to take the hour to talk about some of the ideas in this book called Crucial Influence. This book is from the same group that brought us Crucial Conversations, which was the focus of last week's professional skills workshop. And specifically what we're focused on tonight is this. Fewer than 1 in 8 workplace change efforts produce anything other than cynicism. Unfortunately, I've seen this everywhere I've worked, and so it's certainly a universal thing. What we're going to focus on tonight is what can we do about this. We certainly don't want 1 in every 8 initiatives that we have as a team to fail and produce nothing but cynicism. All right, so these are the 4 topics we're gonna address as we go. We're gonna focus on the 6 sources of influence that's been alluded to in a couple of the previous sessions. We're gonna cover the minor topic of how to change the world. That shouldn't take long, and then we'll move on to 6 sources of influence strategies, and then some final critical questions whenever we're embarking upon an important project. To start with, just to kind of activate our prior knowledge here, I want each of you to think about an intended change in an organization. That organization does not need to be robotics. It can be any organization. And I want you to think about an intended change that either turned out successfully or not. And so I have 6 questions here. And what I'm interested in you doing is thinking quickly through these 6 questions. And for each question, if that question seemed to be applicable in the situation you're remembering, just type that number in the chat, but wait to hit enter. So for example, I might read through these 6 questions and be like, oh yeah, 1, 3, 4, and then we'll hit enter together and see what the distribution looks like. I'll give everyone a moment to read. All right, so go ahead and hit enter. Let's see what types of, which of these 6 show up a lot. All 6, there we go. See what else we've got here. 2, half of them, 5 of them, 4 of them, 3 of them, different 3 of them, 4 of them, 4 of them, 4, 2. Excellent. All right, so do keep in mind how many you identified, and then also whether the intended change was successful or not that you were thinking of. All right. So here, so those 6 questions that I shared on the previous slide, they are directly connected to what are called the 6 sources of influence. If the answer to any of these 6 questions is no, then we as an organization have the opportunity to over-determine success. And I love this idea of over-determining success. The idea is when we want to be successful in a project, in a change, in an initiative, we can focus on over-determining success by addressing as many of these 6 sources of influence as possible. Let's make this a little more concrete, because that's pretty abstract. So here's a very concrete example of how a student used these 6 sources of influence to achieve a desired result 2 seasons ago. And so this was planned out with the help of a mentor. And so the desired result was don't crush tubes. And to provide some context to that, what I'm referring to here is our 2-inch by 1-inch aluminum extrusions that we bolt together for different reasons. And if we tighten the bolt too much, we crush the sides of the tube, rendering the tube useless and potentially very costly in terms of expense and time to replace it with a new tube that's not crushed. And so here is how we attempted to address all 6 sources of influence to help our team not crush tubes. So from a personal motivation perspective, was sharing in like at dinner the downsides of crushing tubes and how irreversible it is. You can't bring them back. From a social motivation perspective, that was the social motivation perspective, sharing at dinner to emphasize the importance. From a structural motivation perspective, we acknowledging members for behaviors that lead towards not crushing tubes. Like, oh, great that you've got a torque wrench. From a personal ability perspective, hands-on training with torque wrenches. You have to know how to operate a torque wrench. From a social ability perspective, having a mini training plan and supplemental videos. And then from a structural ability perspective, having a torque chart posted on the RSU so that it was clear what the proper torques was, and then buying a second torque wrench so that there was more tools to go around for people who needed them. And this was largely successful in terms of us not crushing tubes, which is great. So hopefully that makes a little bit more sense versus some of the abstract concepts. All right, so the second topic I said we just spent a moment on was how to change the world. The 6 sources of influence shape our choices and over time shape our behaviors. Those behaviors produce results, both good and bad results. This is how the world works. Great leaders like you all use this model, but use this model from right to left. Great leaders start by focusing on results. Great leaders are better at articulating what they want to achieve and how they will measure it. Second, they identify a small handful of vital behaviors. These are the specific behavioral changes needed to disproportionately improve results. Third, they engage all 6 sources of influence to support those identified vital behaviors. And moving from right to left is how to change the world. And we're going to focus on strategies today that help us do this on our team, but in any context. All right, so here I've got the same 6 sources of influence. And I guess I should have provided a little more context a moment ago. We organized the 6 sources of influence into 2 columns. The column on the left are those related to motivation. The column on the right are those related to ability. And then we have 3 rows. The first row is focusing on a personal perspective. The second row is focused on a social perspective. And the third row is focused on a structural perspective. And so the questions are gone. And instead, what's replaced the questions that we looked at earlier for these six sources of influence are descriptors that explain what can be done to support the vital behaviors that will lead to the desired results that we want. So I'm not going to read these all to you, but for example, from a personal motivation perspective, how can we help them love what they hate? From a social ability perspective, how can we provide assistance? From a structural motivation perspective, how can we change their economy? Now, for each of these six, we're going to focus on a few strategies and make some connections to things that we're familiar with in the context of FRC. You'll notice in the upper right corner for the next several slides, I have a kind of a condensed view of the six sources of influence, numbered 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And you can see the rows are still labeled personal, social, structural, and the columns are still labeled motivation and ability. And the one we're currently focused on will be in orange. And this is just to provide a little bit of context so we don't get lost as we look at these different tools. So here are four strategies that can help us address, help us motivate the behaviors we want that relate to personal motivation. All of these are reframing tactics. So a change of heart can't be imposed, it has to be chosen. People are capable of making enormous sacrifices when they have the choice to act on their own. An influential leader's job is to help them find their own reason to choose the desired vital behavior. That's what number one, that's the first strategy is all about. Another strategy is to create direct experiences. The most powerful way to help people recognize, feel, and believe in the long-term implications of their choices is to get out of their way and let them experience them firsthand. Ask people just to try it. People tend to resist new behaviors because they're crystal clear about what they'll lose by changing, but uncertain about what they'll gain. When it comes to change, humans tend to overvalue what they're losing while undervaluing what they gain. And no amount of cheerleading will allay the fears as fast as a hands-on experience. Most people prefer to fail conservatively than to succeed differently. Another way of creating vicarious experience is through storytelling. This powerful influence tool is available to all leaders and requires zero resources and very little time. When influential leaders recognize that others aren't personally motivated to enact a vital behavior, they don't work around that problem, they work through it. They operate on the confidence that people are not morally defective, but at times morally sleepy. When called for, they create vicarious experiences through telling compelling stories. The author Richard Powers, in one of my favorite books, The Overstory, says the best arguments in the world won't change a person's mind. The only thing that can do that is a good story. Finally, consider the elements of an enjoyable game. Keeping score, competition, constant improvement, control. All of these are strategies that can help influence from a personal motivation perspective. All right, we're going to let you all process and think about this a little bit. So I'd like you all to think about a direct experience that either you have created for others or others have created for you. And I'm looking for a couple of people to share out, and we're going to kind of ramp our way up here. So just share out in the chat. So we'll go ahead, type, don't need to wait, just hit enter. And we'll see what some of your experience have been that relate to this first source of influence. Anyone have any examples where they've experienced this or provided this experience to others? Yeah, making that connection, sharing stories about your own experience that might resonate with a teammate who's experiencing something similar. I love that. Have any others? Oh, yeah. So rather than arguing about like, hey, your way's not going to work, just try it and see how that goes. For sure, for sure. I'm also reminded of a story of this guy called Dean Kamen, and he wanted to motivate students to engage in STEM. And he made up this game called FRC. That's pretty cool. So, all right. Let's look at number two, personal ability. Um, the three elements of deliberate practice that should be part of any effort to address ability: um, practice one or two specific skills at the edge of one's ability with immediate feedback and coaching. This is research based strategies on how to get better at something, at anything. This connects to edge. So we talked about edge at the very beginning of our professional skills workshop series in terms of in the context of team culture. Edge again is EDGE. Explain, demonstrate, guide, and enable. This is all about the guide step. When we're practicing, when we're helping someone with these three, and the guide is the all important number three, providing that immediate feedback and coaching. This also connects to our pre-work and the link to the video that I shared in the chat at the beginning, um, which is watching out for fundamental attribution error. So that video was about fundamental attribution error. And humans' natural tendency is to attribute most negative behavior to motivational problems and almost never consider whether ability is playing a role. So, therefore, if you want to influence change, it's best to do the opposite. Consider ability problems first and motivational problems second. If people don't feel safe, they often present themselves as not caring. That would be a personal motivation challenge rather than not having the skill to do the thing, which is a personal ability challenge. Um, I see this as a teacher all the time, but it shows up in robotics as well. And so don't assume that. Push back on that and be like, let's focus on ability stuff first, and then if we need to, we can always focus on motivational ones. All right, let's move on to the social row. Um, Smart leaders appreciate the tremendous power humans hold over one another. And instead of denying it, lamenting it, or attacking it, they embrace and enlist it. They use the power of social influence to support change by ensuring that the right people provide encouragement, coaching, and even accountability during crucial moments. Great leaders ensure that people feel praised, emotionally supported, and encouraged by those around them every time they enact vital behaviors. And they ensure that people feel discouraged when they make the wrong choice. There are many examples from our previous workshops that the team uses to provide social motivation. Here are some: servant leadership, a team player mindset, active welcoming. Those are all from our team culture session. Making it safe from our crucial conversations session. All of these provide social support for team members to enact the vital behaviors that are needed for us to be successful. Once you foster new norms, change becomes almost inevitable. Uh, so that raises the question, okay, well, how do we create new norms? And here's how. First, um, we make the undiscussable discussable. So this connects back to making it safe, and it connects back to our team player mindset. Secondly, we create what's referred to as 200% accountability. We strive to create an environment in which everyone is responsible not just to enact the vital behaviors themselves, but to hold others accountable for them as well. So these are the two strategies we can do to have a big impact. All right, pause, breaths, and think. Here's the question I want you to do, and then we're going to try to share these out verbally. So go ahead and raise your hand, and I'll call on a couple of people. I want you to all to reflect on what you might think is something that's undiscussable on your robotics team, and then share your thoughts. What's something that's undiscussable? Uh, and I suppose this could be something either that we'll open it up to hopefully get more participation. Something that was in the past undiscussable, and we did these things, so now we can discuss it, or something that is still undiscussable and we still have work to do. Either one is fine. If you have one of those to share, go ahead and raise your hand in Zoom and we'll listen to a couple. Noga, go ahead.
I think one thing that I personally have seen and I've heard from others that have seen this as well, like mentors, that we've definitely gotten better at sharing like our mistakes or failures in stand up and in demos to just so then the whole team learns, not just whoever saw it firsthand, and to show that it is okay to make mistakes and it happens.
That's a great example. We always have farther we can go with something like that, but we've definitely come a long way. Awesome. Other examples that come to mind? One example that comes to mind here, and we've gotten better, but we're certainly have farther to go, um, is when I walk into a space where safety glasses are required and I see someone not wearing safety glasses. And so I ask that person certainly to put on safety glasses, but I also remind everyone in the room about 200% accountability and that it's all of our responsibilities to keep each other safe, not just the person not wearing safety glasses. And sometimes I need to remind everyone that applies to you all students telling us mentors to put on their safety glasses as well. Maybe I walk into a room and I thought I had put on my safety glasses and I haven't, and you need to keep me safe as well. It doesn't matter that I'm a mentor. So another example where we've made improvements, but are still always room for more. Let's take a look at number 4. So now we're focused on social ability. So effective leaders build plans to provide all 4 of these opportunities. Number one is social permission. Those with formal or informal authority must overtly enable behavior that might have been taboo in the past. Second is modeling. If a picture is worth 1,000 words, a live model who shows what vital behaviors look like in action is worth millions. Help. Help is needed when people haven't yet mastered the new behavior. And finally, real time coaching. That's required to lift each other to the next level. And learning is accelerated when coaching immediately follows an initial attempt at new behavior. So we're back to that edge idea again. An example of enabling social ability occurred in the weeks leading up to Twist the past 2 years. Instead of immediately holding tryouts, we had 2 weeks of open drive team practice for any young woman who might be interested in being part of drive team. Um, we didn't have evaluations. We didn't require a commitment. It enabled a behavior that wasn't common in the past, but we wanted to enable the last couple of years. Let's switch back to the chat. We're going to see if that works well too. So here's my question for you all for this one. I want you to reflect on what situations, not necessarily in high school, not necessarily in robotics, have you experienced where someone provided social permission that enabled you to do something you might have otherwise not done? So think beyond robotics. When did you get social permission that enabled you to do something that without that you would not have done? And then go ahead and just share these in the chat. We'll see what we all come up with. Someone else sharing first in the Zoom so you feel comfortable sharing for sure. Yes, that's so appropriate. When my teacher modeled a math problem so I would understand how to do it correctly, absolutely. That helps to see it. What are some other examples we see? Allowing and encouraging people to ask questions, yes, or have extra help in class, that's great. Modeling that it's okay to go back and look at references, sure. You all have the opportunity to do all four of these things at like every meeting. Um, Part of this is what it means to be a servant leader. And so this just becomes part of providing those positive motivations to reinforce social abilities is what we all should strive to do every day. So let's look at structural. This is where things sometimes get interesting. So structural motivation often looks like a physical thing, like some type of reward. Um, These are called extrinsic because these awards come from outside of the person. And what's really important with this, and I like how this is phrased, is we want to use extrinsic rewards third. Third meaning get personal and social motivators in place first. Let the value of the behavior itself, along with social influences, carry the bulk of the motivational load. Then use these incentives wisely. Don't be afraid to draw on small, heartfelt tokens of appreciation. Remember, when it comes to extrinsic rewards, less is often more. Third, reward behavior, not just results. So take care to link the rewards to the vital behaviors you want to see repeated, not just the results. Sometimes outcomes hide inappropriate behaviors. And what we're really focused on here is encouraging those vital behaviors that we identified at the start. Fourth, discipline sparingly. Um, if you end up that's an important part of what structural motivation and it's needed, provide a warning first. Um, Let everyone know what's happening before like there's some sort of a punishment. But then if we get to that point and that needs to happen, then we want to follow through on that consequence. One example from our team where this has shown up over the last few years is students recognizing other students who exhibited desired behaviors through our dedicated dogs program. And students who were recognized got to select one of our robotics themed stickers from our bag of stickers. So that's an example of structural motivation. Um, let's go back to raising hands and talking to mix it up a bit. Um, what are some other examples from your team that is an example of providing structural motivation? Yeah, Braden shared in here linear task completion percentages. So to provide some context there, um, what Braden's referring to is when we do our cycle planning meetings and we look at the end of, I assume, and Braden, jump in and correct me if I'm wrong, when we look at how we did for a given cycle, we can see what percentage of our issues were completed in that cycle compared to what percentage of all the issues we had planned on completing. Um, and so that can provide that's something built into linear that helps us structurally provide some motivation. Cool. I think I got that right, it looks like. Others? I think on a similar vein, the way we do our stand-up meetings during dinner every night is an example of that too, where each sub team or each FPM is sharing out. Here's what we're doing. Here's what we're doing next. Here's the help I need. Um, that's that structure that we have built into our days. Rewarding good behaviors towards a shared goal. Absolutely. Yeah. Oh, demos during stand-up. There's another great example. All sorts of good stuff. All right, so I want to share with you an example of how not to do this. So this is contrasting being employed here. Um, this is an old Dilbert comic. And so for those of you not familiar, the character on the far left there is the pointy haired boss. And then the three people in the middle are the three engineers. And so what the boss is saying is our goal is to write bug-free software. I'll pay a $10 bonus for every bug you find and fix. And the engineers are ecstatic. So this would be an example of structural motivation. And then in the final panel, I hope this drives the right behavior. After all, that's what we want our structural motivation to do. And the character on the far right, whose name is Wally, says, I'm going to write me a new minivan this afternoon, um, implying that he is off to write a lot of bugs in the software so that he'll get paid $10 to fix every one of them. Uh, so our software team does not have this type of a structural motivation at all. All right. Number 6. So this is structural ability. Um, One of the simplest ways to increase your influence is to make physical and virtual changes that make bad behavior harder and good behavior easier. Here's a few ways of doing this. Number one, add a cue. So use cues to prompt attention at the moment a new behavior is needed. We do this in our workflows all the time. You look at the next step, it reminds you of something, you go ahead and do it, you don't forget about it. We do that a lot. Number two, change the data stream. Influence hearts and minds by exposing people to information that helps them see what happens when vital behaviors are and are not practiced. Um, we do this during stand up. Where I used to work, we would have rolling televisions in like the central area by the restrooms that would display like the bug curve and the bug count when we were getting close to release. So every time you walked by, you'd see where we're at and where we're headed. Number three, promote physical proximity. Use distance to shape choices. Research shows that the frequency and quality of human interaction is largely a function of physical distance. When leaders fail to foster social proximity, bad things happen. Silos form and infighting reigns. This is one reason why we eat dinner as a whole team every day. This is another reason I'm so excited when we moved to Onshape because it allowed every student with a Chromebook to have the CAD in their hands when they're assembling robots. Um, huge, huge benefit. Number four, make it easy. We want to do everything we can to make the behaviors we want reasonably easy and obvious. And number five, change a process. Where possible, build the new behavior into policies and processes. We have time to share some. I want to focus on this one in a little bit more depth before we move on. Um, so I'd love several examples, ideally maybe of all five of these, of something that we've done to improve the structural ability for a behavior we're looking for. So an example where we added a cue, changed the data stream, promoted physical proximity, made it easy, or changed a process. So go ahead and raise your hand, give us a quick explanation of what that example is, and we'll see how many of these five we can knock out. Edie, go ahead.
Yeah, for promoting physical proximity, like if you're having an important meeting, you would want to do it, try to have it happen in person. So like opinions over messages just in text wouldn't come across wrong and everybody understands each other better.
I think that's a great example. We got four other ones: cues, data streams, making it easy, changing a process. What have you experienced? Yeah, Anita?
On VCarve, like changing the colors of certain like hole sizes so that we realize, oh wait, these two are not the same size. These need different like drill bits.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. For sure, for sure. Yeah. That reminds me too, someone in the past on our order form changed it so that if the quantity isn't one, it gets colored differently. So I don't order the wrong stuff. Fatima, what do you have?
For change a process and make it easy, the software design docs because they like make it easy to make a subsystem and it also changes that process.
Great. Two for one. Nicely done. I want to have a data stream example. I think that's the one maybe we're missing. We'll have to keep thinking on that. I'm sure we have other examples. All right, so now you all actually have to work. Here's what I've got. So what I've done here, and I'm gonna paste this back in the chat again, so you all have access to it. Here is a link to our shared slides in case you didn't get it earlier. Go ahead and open that up in a new tab. We're gonna break into 6 breakout rooms. I've assigned each breakout room based on your breakout room number, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, a specific goal from last season. I picked these because I thought they would lead to a good discussion in your breakout room. And I didn't want you all trying to decide which goal to talk about, so I just picked 6. So this slide tells you which goal goes for each breakout room, so you'll be able to refer to that in the link I sent you. And some of these goals we met, some of these goals we didn't meet. And these are last year's goals. But this can provide important feedback and ideas and influence us as we finalize the definition of the upcoming season's goals or this year's goals. So in your breakout room, I want you to identify one source of influence that we did apply. And I want you to identify one source of influence that we didn't, but we could have applied. And then I want you to decide who's going to share those 2 sources of influence when we all come back together. Okay. And I'm going to give you 4 for this. So it's in 4 minutes. Let me get a room here set. Make sure I've got time right. So it's going to be 4 minutes, then the 60 countdown. So that looks good. Make sure I've got my room set up right between all 6 of you. I think we're in good shape. All right, here we go. Off to the breakout rooms. Welcome back, everyone. We're going to start with breakout room number 1. And breakout room number 1, just for everyone to have the context, they were examining the goal that 80% of the members of our team have at least 8 service hours, and our entire team has a median of 11 hours by our first competition. So who from that breakout room would like to share one source of influence we employed and one we didn't but could have?
So we said that it was structural motivation because to go to competition, you have to have at least 8 hours of service. And then something we could like apply would be like personal ability to having like newer members sign up quicker to other like outreach events and sort of that kind of thing.
Great. Perfect. Love it. Room number 2, you had goal 1C, which was for every FLL FTC team that we mentor, the assigned student mentors fully participate in at least 1 meeting a week.
So we said we were going to say structural motivation, but we also said social ability because a lot of the times when we have mentors at schools, it's like it's not just one mentor, it's many of them. So when you have someone who is more experienced than you and you watch them mentor, elementary schoolers, you think to yourself that you can actually do it, even if you think you can't. So we thought social ability fit that really well. We think that something we could apply that we don't apply as much, but we could apply more is social motivation, taking more accountability, things like that.
I could see that. Yeah. And one thing I know that we've tried to encourage the teams to do is pick meeting times that high schoolers can actually physically get to. Um, and so, like, 2:30 on a Thursday isn't going to work when classes end at 3:10 necessarily. So, great example. Room 3, you had goal 2C, which is help every member find a sub team they enjoy, conduct a survey a week into the season, and encourage all members to fill it out. Speak with those who are unhappy. What do you think?
So our group basically said that it was like pretty flexible for one person to leave a sub team and join another one throughout the season. They can still like learn a lot and get involved in the sub team even if they change it. Because I feel like that's like a thing that we're really like flexible about, and like we let new members like change their sub teams and find whatever they're interested in. So
And then is there a source of influence that we didn't employ that we could have employed, perhaps?
oh wait, are you talking about last year?
Yeah, last year. Yeah.
I'm a new member, so
All right. Anyone else from room 3 wants to jump in with a source of influence that might have been effective for us? No. All right. All right, on to room 4. So room 4, you all had 3E, which a goal was to retain 80% of members during the entire build season. What's the source that we employed for that, and what's one we could have done?
So we said that something that we already employ is personal motivation because we don't take attendance or require people to come to meetings or join robotics, I guess. So that's something that people are choosing to do and choosing to come to the meetings. So that really employs the personal motivation. But something that we could try to employ is personal ability because I feel like a lot of times people don't do robotics or choose to quit just because of time management or not being able to personally manage everything that robotics brings. So one thing that we could help with is trying to help with that personal ability to help people actually be able to join the team with like time management and stuff.
I think that's great. I love that one. All right, goal or room 5 had goal 4D, have no major failures in qualification and finals matches. Who would like to share what their group talked about for that one?
Our group, we talked about one thing we did well was personal ability because we use like the edge method and those skills a lot to get us to those no major failures with training, not necessarily directly at competition, but all the steps we need to take to lead us up to no major failures. And then we said um, for source 5 structural motivation, we could use more of that because we sort of we're rewarded for the result in like winning a match and moving up with that, but not necessarily for the behavior of making things better.
Absolutely. Yeah. Focusing on the behaviors, not just the outcome. Sometimes we just get lucky that it works. And then finally, group 6, post weekly open alliance updates throughout the season.
Yeah, so for one sort of like influence that we thought that we used was when it came to like structural ability, and that we already had like a lot of reference documentation stuff that like leads could use when it came to actually like designing, drafting their post. Something that we could have applied though was when it came to structural motivation. We oftentimes found that like, if you're a lead, you didn't really have like an incentive to like write up an open lines post. And a lot of times maybe like whoever the open lines coordinator was had to sort of like chase that lead down. I'm just trying to like tell them to, like make your open alliance post.
For sure. Oh, these were great. You all had fantastic insights. One thing I'd like to share from my perspective is all of the sources of influence that you all shared related to these goals that were effective. None of them, as far as I can remember, existed 10 years ago. So we've come a long way and we can continue to keep doing greater and greater things by employing these 6 sources of influence so that we can affect change in a positive way. All right, a couple final thoughts just to wrap this up. These 3 questions is what we should think about when we want to positively influence change. They should seem familiar because they're the 3 steps that we outlined at the beginning of how to change the world. Couple of practical notes. If you're not up against a great deal of resistance, you might not need to overthink this. Simply throwing 1 or 2 sources of influence at the behavior might be all that's needed to invite change. The primary value of these strategies that we focused on tonight is not, though, just for solving big, hairy, overwhelming problems. If change is important, your goal should be to over-determine success. And that this message is important tonight because that's not the way things work in most organizations. Most organizations are striving for efficiency, so most leaders ask, what's the least we can do to get results? You all as leaders are less likely to fall prey to that mindset if you've thoroughly diagnosed the problem, if you've gathered data about how well or how poorly all sources of influence are aligned with the behaviors that you hope to foster, then you can create more realistic influence plans. As I mentioned, tonight we focused on Crucial Influence, the book on the left. There is another book called Crucial Accountability, the same crucial learning organization that brought us Crucial Conversations. It also focuses on the 6 sources of influence, but it does it from a different perspective because these 6 sources of influence can also be applied reactively to hold each other accountable in such a manner that actually strengthens relationships. So if that is something of interest to you, check out the other book as well. As always, really would like your feedback. So please consider either tonight or tomorrow sharing any feedback you have on this particular professional skills workshop, or any of the previous ones that you've gone to, or just this whole series in general, or maybe ideas for next year, like, oh, I wish we had talked about this. I'll put it in the chat to make it even easier. I think that's one of the sources of influence. So you can click on the link right now and open up in a tab without having to refer to the slides. So thank you everyone for your participation tonight. Thank you for your insightful ideas that you shared. And thank you for coming along over these past several weeks for all of these sessions. Thanks everyone.